It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, how a booming trade in fake fashion is funding organised crime and even terrorism. We go undercover to reveal how murky criminal networks are being bankrolled by counterfeit fashion. Also ahead, how the economic fallout from the Iran war looks set to be particularly bad for Britain. Rising inflation and falling growth, with the UK forecast to take the biggest hit out of the world's major economies. Also tonight, Sarah Ferguson is stripped of another honour as York Council revokes her Freedom of the City title over her links to Jeffrey Epstein. The hunt for the missing capybara. We'll hear from Marwell Zoo as they lay traps for the animal which has spent almost 10 days on the run now. All that to come and more here on the UK Tonight. Good evening, good to have you with us. Now, it is a booming multi-billion-pound trade fuelled by demand from Gen Z shoppers and promoted across the internet by influencers. Fake fashion is readily available in UK high streets, but it does generate huge profits for organised crime. It's thought to be twice as lucrative as drug trafficking. It involves organised crime gangs like the Triads, Mafia and other cartels around the world. And investigators have even found direct links between counterfeit clothes and the funds behind terror attacks. Sky's Katerina Vitozzi went undercover to get a clearer picture of what is a murky criminal operation.
I think it will be chock full of goods for us to look at.
We've been invited to see a trading standards raid.
Shops here.
Every council has a team. They're the ones who tackle fake fashion. They've had intelligence that a high street shop is selling counterfeit goods from the brand North Face.
My name's Nicola. I'm from Trading Standards at Wolverhampton Council.
Whilst her colleagues try and ID the shop worker, and private brand investigator Steve Baker identifies what's fake and what's not, Officer Nicola Biddle sweeps the store.
I just want to check that there isn't anyone here that we're not aware of. OK, so we've got another door down there and this one here. Shall I come with you? OK, so shoes. We've got a Versace print slipper written on this box. There we go. Oh, OK, so we've got like a lockup. Oh, wow, OK. Might need a bigger van.
There is far more here than anyone expected, from dozens of brands.
You just look at the way it's packaged like that, it's straight away, it's a fake, yeah.
And you can see the shipment labels on some of these goods, things like Bangladesh.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Typically China, you'd expect that's where these goods are coming from?
Yeah, Turkey. Yeah, so they just move around with the production's cheapest. The facade is it's a legitimate business, but he's not paying duties on this stuff coming in. It has gone through customs, but they're so busy looking at other stuff like contraband, firearms, drugs, you know, and this comes, it's probably about fourth or fifth in what they look for.
After hours of searching and cataloguing, the team start removing seized items. 54 bags worth.
The team estimate that if these were genuine items, they'd have a market value of about £500,000. I mean, it's quite staggering to see how much they've found in just one small shop in the West Midlands. And it really does make you think, if they found this volume here, how much is there across the rest of the UK?
The answer is, it's for sale everywhere. A crime in plain sight. On the high street and online. The whole UK counterfeiting trade is worth £9 billion, costing the economy about £2.5 billion in lost tax revenue every year. Fake fashion counts for about a third of that. It's become the most profitable income stream for organised crime groups, twice as lucrative as drug trafficking. It's a trade being driven in the UK by younger consumers. A third of Gen Z shoppers, that's the under 30s, have knowingly bought a fake fashion item in the past 12 months.
Anyone has a heart attack, it is not real, OK?
We found these on TikTok.
It's a bit of luxury on a budget.
It's not only illegal to sell counterfeit goods, but to promote them too.
I'm literally obsessed with it. You can go and shop this in the link in my bio.
It's influencers like these, promoting things like bags and linking their followers to sites where they can buy them, that experts say are reaching a whole new generation of fake fashion shoppers.
We've really seen this marked attitudinal shift, particularly amongst Gen Z. And they're the ones that we see who have in their own minds rationalised or normalised the idea of counterfeits. So I think we've got to work with the social media platforms, because they're the ones that are hosting these individuals. But I think there's a big awareness piece, because I think some of those influencers are just unaware of the impact of their actions. And if they were to receive, you know, an email, a caution telling them, you know, you're helping to fund organised crime, you're committing a crime, and, you know, I think that would make a big difference.
We approached the influencers featured and TikTok for comment on this investigation, but we've had no official response. But the videos we showed have now been removed. That might affect supply, but what about demand?
People are drawn by a cheap product and have no concept of what really lies behind it.
Michael Ellis has been hunting counterfeit criminals for nearly 40 years in the UK and across the world.
Our biggest problem is convincing people that it isn't victimless. In all my career, I've never involved in a counterfeiting case that's never been involved in something else. Right from the offset, it's money laundering, it's tax evasion, it's linked to modern-day slavery. The investigations into the Charlie Hebdo shooting uncovered direct links to the sales of counterfeiting. The same with the Madrid bombings.
Do you think if people realised this, or even a small amount of it, that they would still look at something, think it's fake probably because it's a, you know, a designer bag for a tenner, and it would stop them?
I don't know if consumers would ever look beyond the price.
And that's the challenge. A battle on both sides of supply and demand, with criminal gangs attracted by the low risk and high profits, and buyers who think they're getting a little luxury at a cheap price, when really the cost is so much greater. Katerina Vitozzi, Sky News.
Well, it is concerning, so let's discuss it with Trading Standards Officer Dennis Chalmers. Dennis, it's really good to see you. I'd imagine you would echo a lot of what we heard in Katerina's piece there about the challenge for people like you in trying to tackle this.
Yeah, the scale of it is just growing out of control now. As you saw in your piece there, it's available everywhere. It's becoming normalised.
And do you agree that people aren't asking enough questions, or they're just turning a blind eye? They may have an idea that this is linked to crime, or maybe even worse, like terrorism, and they're just not asking the questions. They don't want to know.
I think there's a bit of both. I think there be more education out there and to inform people. I think a lot of it is from influencers, because they're successful because they exploit the trust of their followers and create a narrative to buying counterfeits is acceptable. It's a way to get the look without paying the high price, and I think that's what's driving it.
Yeah, the cost of living crisis continues. We think inflation's going to go up this year. Do you understand why people who might want something don't want to pay the full price for the real thing? Do you see where the drive for this is coming from?
Yeah, we can see people in the UK buying counterfeit goods primarily due to the cost of living, seeking that luxury status for a fraction of the price. You can understand where they're coming from. But I think this is where we need to educate the people what it's linked to and the seriousness of this, what it's supporting.
Dennis, when it comes to the actual work you do, it must be incredibly difficult. If you find some of this fake stuff, this counterfeit fashion, is it usually just on its own being stored, or are there other things? I think you've told us about things like fake branded cigarettes and worse in terms of the people who are being brought into doing this kind of thing. Yeah.
So what we're finding, as you'll find on every high street now where you look, you'll see what we call as tobacco shops, they class itself as little corner shops. These are full of cigarettes, illegal goods, It's lucrative to the organised crime groups because they launder money through there and other criminal activities. But it's the legal status. Often the people are smuggled into the UK by these organised crime groups. Particularly, they're vulnerable to exploitation. So they end up working in these environments, such as illicit factories, illicit tobacco shops, car washes, nail bars, takeaways. Those are just a fraction of them.
What if you were running the country, if you were making laws around this kind of thing, if you were getting the police to act, what one thing would you do to make tackling this better, make it more successful for people like you in trading standards? Because of the size of it, we need, and the scale that you're seeing, it's much more lucrative than drugs. But the counterfeiting is known to support OCGs and other criminal activity. Often it supports the drug funds. We need to combat this in a multi-approach, multi-agency, stricter controls at the borders, more controls over the sites advertising this with the influencers, more for a national task force, because trading standards don't just deal with it on a day-to-day basis. They've got lots of other things to do, like what's on your shelf in the food store, in your petrol stations. They're dealing with everything. You need someone who's just focusing on this because of the size and the scale of it. Have there been attempts at that sort of multi-agency approach before? Yeah, in Manchester, where I'm located, the Operation Vulcan, Greater Manchester Police, and they had huge success and the millions of pounds worth, tons of stuff in the Cheetham Mill Strangeways area. So when the focus is there, it works. Yeah, but the focus isn't there enough, I guess you're saying? Not all the time. It needs to be funded and more focus on this, because just for an example, a couple of months ago in our area, we received perfumes and counterfeit goods. The retail value was nearly £10 million. Now, that'd go drugs. That'd be getting major attention. Yeah, I guess it's getting people to join the dots in their own head. I mean, look, you know, we're leading our programme with this story tonight in Katerina's piece. And organised crime is one thing. I mean, that's bad enough. But when you hear that the money could be going towards funding acts of terror, if that message got through, it'd be very hard for people to ignore that, wouldn't it? It would. And I think we need to get through. I've seen it in the Gen Z. We need to get the attention across that what this is funding, because people making these goods, it could be children abroad from Turkey, India, all other countries, China. If you see how the conditions they're in, and also the people who are in the UK working in these shops, in your nail bars, in your shops, and your factories selling this, they're not even on minimum wage. It's all illegal. Dennis, really appreciate talking to you about this evening. Thanks for joining us. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, next, we've heard a lot about how the Iran war could hit economies around the world. And today, we may have got a better idea with the outlook for Britain looking particularly gloomy. A new report from the International Economic Organisation, the OECD, is warning the UK faces the biggest hit out of the world's major economies, with inflation forecast to go up again and the growth the government so desperately wants downgraded. Our economics editor, Ed Conway, has this.
How bad is this going to be for the economy? We've just got our first assessment from the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, this big kind of economic institution. And they say, in short, not good. This was their forecast for economic growth before the war came along, and they were expecting it to get a little bit weaker in the coming quarters. That's kind of one quarter in a row, just for global growth. But now, and that's partly because of, like, you know, trade barriers and all of the other things going on in the global economy. But now, look, this is the pathway they're expecting. So they're downgrading their forecast for the global picture. But when you break it down by countries around the world, it's kind of striking here. So I've highlighted the UK there. This is the last year that we've had. And they were already expecting growth to be a bit weaker this year. So the UK was kind of mid-table last year. This year, it was expected to be kind of around about there, so a little bit weaker. But now that we've had, well, what's happened in the last few weeks, here's where they expect it to go. So look, the UK has just been downgraded quite significantly. Interestingly, the US gets upgraded. So stronger growth in the US because of what's happening. That's partly because we've got higher gas prices, higher oil prices, big oil producer, big gas producer in the US. But the UK downgraded actually by 0.5 percentage points, which is more than any other economy. So a big downgrade, not good news for the UK, and raises the question, of course, why is this happening? Well, part of the explanation is that the growth was already relatively weak, and they've, the latest numbers aren't particularly promising. But partly it's a few other things as well. Think about the fact that we've got very high debt levels in the UK and the debt interest costs are rising here. And actually, this is just showing you the 10-year bond yield in the UK. It's kind of what the government, we have to pay on government debt, highest since 2008. And if you compare the UK to other countries around the G7, so other major economies, look, that's the rest of the G7, that's the UK. It's kind of an outlier. So we're paying higher interest than most other countries around the world. On top of that, energy costs. Now, the extent to which higher oil prices, gas prices feed into inflation differs by country. So that's the US, an extra 0.3% on inflation. The euro area, an extra 0.98% on inflation. But for the UK, it's even more. I mean, it's not much more than the euro area, but nonetheless, it is more. So inflation feeds through in a way that it kind of, is more exacerbating for the UK than elsewhere. A final thing to note, there is a real impact on all of our pockets, but it differs by different income groups. So for high-income groups, the extent to which inflation is affected by energy costs, which is basically what these bars are showing you, is not that high. But for low-income groups, because more of their income is spent on energy, it is higher in the UK than basically anywhere else. Put all of that together, and it helps explain why, particularly for low-income households, but also for the UK as a whole, the economic implications of the Iran war are potentially very serious.
Well, some breaking news to bring you now related to the Iran war. Donald Trump has taken to Truth Social and he says, as per the Iranian government request, please let this statement serve to represent that I am pausing the period of energy plant destruction by 10 days to Monday, April the 6th, 2026 at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. He says talks are ongoing and despite erroneous statements to the contrary by the fake news media and others, he says they are going very well. Thank you for your attention to this matter. He signs it off. President Donald J. Trump. So, another change in the approach by the US towards Iran, and Donald Trump there confirming that they are pausing, or rather extending a pause of energy plant destruction by another 10 days, and that's going to run until Monday, April the 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Sarah Ferguson has been stripped of another honour over her friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, this time from the City of York, with councillors there tonight voting to revoke her Freedom of the City title. The former Duchess has faced growing scrutiny, with her name appearing several times in the Epstein files, though being named does not indicate any wrongdoing, of course. Our North of England correspondent Shingi Mararike joins us now. Evening to you, Shingi. Tell us more about what councillors decided then.
Good evening, Matt. So in a special council meeting that took around 10 minutes to debate, Sarah Ferguson was stripped of that honorary title, the Freedom of the City of York, which won't have a tangible impact on her, but it's a reminder of the public perception of her relationship with the disgraced paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein. And over the course of the meeting, there were contributions from a number of councillors criticising that relationship, including from the councillor who tabled the motion, Daryl Smalley, who is a Lib Dem councillor. This is what he had to say after the vote was taken.
It's hard to state, as a city councillor and as a resident of the city, how egregious it's been to be connected to Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and Sarah Ferguson, as details after details have come out about their close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. I think it's right as a city council, and the decision was unanimous tonight, that we protect that honour and for what it means for the city, but also seek to distance ourselves as a city from those two individuals.
there, that councillor referring to the Epstein files, which have been released over the course of this year in various tranches, and the fact that we could see in those files that Sarah Ferguson continued to contact Jeffrey Epstein even after he had been convicted of child sex offences. As you were saying there, though, Matt, she denies any wrongdoing, and this is part of a wider saga that's seen Prince Andrew arrested last month over the allegations of misconduct in public office. He has been bailed for pending further investigation, and he also denies wrongdoing. But it's interesting that this vote to strip her of that title comes 4 years after Prince Andrew was stripped of the title, becoming the first person to lose the freedom of the City of York because of his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. So now tonight what we have seen is the City of York now also attempting to distance itself from Sarah Ferguson after it distanced itself from Andrew Mountbatten Windsor as well.
Shingy, thanks very much indeed. Now, police in the UK have reopened a criminal investigation into the influencer Andrew Tate. It's connected to allegations of rape and sexual assault made by 3 women. Andrew Tate has denied the allegations. Our correspondent Olivia Guthrie is here with me in the studio. It feels like he's been investigated in more than one place, Romania, the UK, for an awfully long time now.
Well, indeed, and these allegations against the influencer date back more than a decade ago. 3 women reported to Hertfordshire police that claims that he raped and sexually assaulted them in 2014 and 2015. Now, it was investigated for 4 years and then the case was closed in 2019. But now the force are reopening it after the Independent Office for Police Conduct looked into the handling of that original case. Now, a former detective constable is facing potential gross misconduct proceedings over alleged failures to properly investigate. Now, the women involved at the centre of this case have issued a statement through their lawyers saying that from the beginning, all we have wanted is for our cases and the evidence to be fully and fairly considered by those with the power to do so. And Hertfordshire Police have also issued a statement saying that they are committed to doing what is right and ensuring that allegations of such a serious nature are properly, thoroughly and fully investigated, no matter how long ago they occurred. Now, Andrew Tate is already facing a civil case in the High Court brought by these 3 women and a 4th, and that's happening in June. Now, the court documents for that case claim that he held a gun to a woman's face, that he beat another claimant with a belt, and that he held her by the throat. Now, Andrew Tate's lawyers have said that this is now the 3rd investigation into the same alleged conduct, dating back more than a decade. On 2 separate occasions, the Crown Prosecution Service determined that there was insufficient evidence to bring any charge, and they add that Mr Tate categorically denies all of these allegations, and we shall wait to see what happens with that police investigation.
We shall indeed. Olivia, thank you very much indeed. We're also keeping across this evening Nigel Farage, who is speaking at Reform UK's local election launch tonight. We'll bring you the updates from that as we get them, but there he is on stage right now with his Reform colleagues in Sunderland.
You can join us. You can give us...
In the meantime, still to come here on the UK Tonight, we'll hear from the mother of a 5-year-old boy whose death has led to a new law on allergy safety in schools. Also, a landmark moment for sport as transgender women are banned from female categories at the Olympics.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
A new law is set to come into force in England focused on allergy safety in our schools. It follows a national campaign that was led by the family of 5-year-old Benedict Blythe, who died from an allergic reaction at school back in 2021. Now, this new law will require all schools to have allergy policies, staff training and access to emergency medication. A bit earlier on, I spoke with Benedict's mum, Helen Blythe. Helen, great to have you join us here on the UK Tonight this evening. Look, it's been a long road you've had to travel down, and one that you never would have wanted to take, of course. The best place to start really is tell us about Benedict. Tell us about who he was.
I love being asked that question. It's always nice to have a chance to talk about him. So Benedict was my son. He loved maths and numbers and was a really curious and kind little boy. It was one of the greatest things to be able to be his parent. And he used to wake up on a Sunday morning and say, "Mummy, can we please play numbers?" And I think he knew everything about every single character out of Thomas the Tank Engine. So we had a lot of lovely memories together. He also had allergies, so we knew from a really young age that allergies were a part of his life, and he had his first reaction when he was only a few months old. And it was his allergies that ended up taking his life, ultimately, when he was 5 years old.
I was going to ask how soon it was you realised Benedict was allergic to things. And was it more than just one thing? Because I think it was cow's milk that ended up being the big problem then.
Yeah, so cow's milk was the thing that I think dominated our lives. It's in so many foods, and it was where he had his biggest reactions. But we knew that he had other allergies as well. So he was allergic to kiwi and to sesame and to eggs, and we had other things along the way that he became allergic to and then dropped allergies to. But milk was the biggest worry for us, and particularly when he started school, it was something that we were really mindful of, and we communicated to the school because we know that milk is something that's in every classroom. Children have milk in their foods, and it was a real worry for us as parents. So we did everything that we could to make sure that school was safe for him.
Other parents and carers of children with allergies will hear that and know exactly what you're talking about. But correct me if I'm wrong, you're then also trying to balance not wrapping them in cotton wool at the same time and being overly protective. Was that a challenge you had to deal with?
It's a real challenge. I mean, you know that the transition from nursery to school is a big one, and as parents you don't want to, I think, look like you're worrying too much. You want to give them the freedom, and we were also just really conscious that school is a place where children need to learn to manage their own risks as well. So you can't be there every minute, and there needed to be a bit of, giving them free rein. But we asked the right questions. So we went into the school and we asked, do you have an allergy policy, and is there allergy training that's done for staff? And we made sure we wrote down a plan for them. So I think there's got to be a bit of freedom, but we really wanted to make sure the measures were in place, and we were assured that they were. It was only last year, his inquest, that we found out that probably that wasn't the case, and that in fact some of the things that we'd been told were in place weren't, and ultimately that was part of the reason why, when he had an allergic reaction at school, he didn't come home.
So it was several years after Benedict died that you had to wait to get a truer picture of actually what happened. When you got that picture, how did you feel? You must have been shocked that things hadn't worked out as they should have at the time.
Yeah, we were, and it was, I think, unusual for us to get to the point a few years on and still not have answers. So what we did know is that Benedict woke up on the 1st of December 2021. He was happy and healthy. He went downstairs and opened his advent calendar, and then he went off to school and he experienced a severe allergic reaction while he was at school, known as anaphylaxis. And he didn't come home. He died a little later that day. And in the inquest, which was last summer, so 3.5 years after he died, we found that it was a sort of series of failings. So there wasn't an allergy policy in place, there wasn't allergy medication stored in the school, the staff providing his care hadn't seen the plan that we'd written, they didn't know how to identify his symptoms, and they also weren't trained. And I think the shocking thing for us when we started campaigning a few years ago, and before we even knew that this related to us and our case, was that there was no requirement on schools for these things to be in place at all. So they didn't do these things, in an ideal world they would have done, but there was no requirement on them. The government didn't need them to do those things. And that felt like a pretty glaring gap for us as a family.
Yes, because I imagine a lot of people have some awareness. If they don't have allergies themselves or their children don't, they have some awareness. They might just think, oh, it's peanuts, for example. We better not put those bars in their lunchbox. But it can be such a variety of things, like you say in Benedict's case, cow's milk as well. Now that things have passed through the system and Benedict's law is getting royal assent, what does that mean for schools? Do you think it's going to stop anything like this happening again?
Yeah, we do. So in terms of Benedict's law, we've been campaigning for there to be spare allergy pens, allergy training and allergy policies in every school, and that's what Benedict law gives. And so there's two things. One is that we're really happy that new statutory guidance is going to come into place from September. So that's over 25 pages of really detailed guidance that will tell schools exactly how to implement Benedict's law. And then Benedict's law is going to be enshrined in primary legislation, which means that schools, all schools, including independent schools, will have to do this. And that really changes the shape of allergies in schools. It means that not only will lives definitely be saved as a result of this, but also children who might have experienced really distressing allergic reactions at school hopefully will be prevented from having to do so. The number of mistakes will drop. Mistakes will still happen, but schools will be better prepared for when they do.
And it does affect a lot of children, doesn't it? I think it's 6 or 7%, which works out at 2 in every class on average. 680,000 school-aged children have allergies. It does make you wonder, knowing how many kids there are who could be affected like Benedict was, why this wasn't already in place.
It's a good question, and one we've probably asked quite a few times. I think it's frustrating, and I know for the allergy community they've long campaigned for this. I think we're really fortunate that we had a story that people would listen to, and great support to get us to where we are in terms of being listened to by the government and having this put in place. And we know that the ripples of this will be huge. So not only will there be better protections for those 680,000 pupils, but there'll be 1.15 million adults who work in schools that will be trained as part of this. It'll be the first time that allergy is put into primary legislation. So in terms of the impact that this makes on the whole of society in terms of the awareness of allergies, that's fairly significant as well. People who work in schools don't stop having that knowledge when they leave the building. They'll take that into their communities, and I think being able to shape a world that is more allergy aware, where people can be safer, is an amazing legacy for us to be able to give to our son.
Just a final question. We started talking about Benedict. I'd like to finish off by talking about you and his dad, and I think he has a sister in Etta. Correct me if I'm wrong. People will hear you talk about this and be so impressed and know how difficult it is, and it's so unimaginable for other parents to know what losing a child is like. With the years passing, what keeps you going in terms of talking about it? Has it been trying to get this law passed? Has it been that urge, as you often hear other people in similar situations say, we don't want this to happen to others?
It's exactly that. I mean, we know that this will not change what has happened to us and our family. It will not bring our son back, but it might prevent other families from having to go through what we've been through. And for other parents worrying about dropping their children off at school and worrying that they won't come home again. And for us to be able to make that difference through the work that we've done and will continue to do. You know, we've still got Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland to get to follow suit. You know, that's an important thing for us to have been able to kind of give back to the world. You know, my son was a really kind child who looked out for others, and it's a fitting legacy to take that kindness into doing something I think he would be very proud of.
Helen, we're really grateful to you for talking to us about it on the UK Tonight this evening. Thanks so much. Benedict's former school, Barnack Primary School, has previously said it offered its sincere and heartfelt condolences to Benedict's family at the tragic loss of Benedict. Still to come here on the UK Tonight, we'll get reaction to a ruling that bans transgender women from competing in female categories at the Olympics. Plus, the hunt for the missing capybara called Samba that's escaped from Marwell Zoo.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
To the world of sport now, and a landmark ruling from the International Olympic Committee today banning transgender women from competing in all-female events. Eligibility will now be limited to biological women with athlete status determined by a one-time test. The ruling was welcomed by the former Team GB swimmer Sharon Davis.
This isn't about keeping anybody out of sport. I mean, all of us want as many people to do sport as possible, but this is about giving people that are biologically female a fair opportunity at winning medals and changing their lives.
It is an issue that divides opinion. Here to talk about it with me now is Dr. Blair Hamilton, a former transgender footballer and academic. Blair, good to see you. What do you think about the IOC's decision today?
Thank you very much for having me, first and foremost. My opinion in summary of these rules is that the rules are outdated. They're going to, cause real harm come Los Angeles in 2028. what they're trying to do is sort of reduce a person's entire biology to a single SRY gene, which simply isn't how sex works or its links to sports performance. I mean, there's zero evidence that the chromosomes are a reliable indicator of athletic ability. You know, athletic ability is shaped by, you know, a variety of factors such as physiology, hormones, training, nutrition, and, you know, opportunities to training. And the idea that this protects fairness in women's sport isn't really backed by science, and it needs to be questioned.
Isn't it? Because people have that perception that someone who's been born a man, has gone through puberty, they, you know, make testosterone, they're taller, bigger, stronger, potentially, and then transitions to a woman. The perception from some is they have an unfair advantage. And we've seen that in certain sports that have led to bans. Cycling, for example, springs to mind.
Yeah, and exactly. And this is where I slightly disagree with the framing of the story here. I don't think this ban specifically is aimed at transgender women, for example, because the transgender women are already banned, as you said, from cycling, from athletics, from swimming, as these sports you're talking about. I think this ban is more aimed at, you know, female athletes with sex variations. I think that's more where it's at. And in terms of, to answer your question of, obviously, of transgender athletes who are assigned male at birth, transition to female, the actual evidence base for whether these transgender athletes have an advantage or disadvantage in transgender athletes specifically is very inconsistent. It's very diverse. We can't have any, you know, concrete conclusions from this data that we have at the moment. I think there's only been 36 transgender female athletes studied, and 2 of those were case studies of one athlete. So we can't really confirm whether they have an advantage or disadvantage in anything.
Yes, because the IOC say they're basing it on scientific evidence, but others I've spoken to say they never seem to see enough of this evidence. And like you say, you don't think there is enough evidence to be going on at all.
No, absolutely. And that's where it's really quite interesting, because there's no solid science behind these rules. I mean, there's no good evidence that, you know, women athletes with sex variations or transgender female athletes have a real performance advantage or disadvantage in an athletic group. The data there, as I said before, is just inconsistent, inconclusive, and most of it's flawed, like methodologically, or it's biased. And we can't conclude anything from it at the moment. And that's where I think, with this IOC policy, I think the working group behind it and the science and the policies that the evidence they've used to create this policy really needs to be brought to light, and actually, so we can critically analyse how they've came to this decision.
I'd like to focus on you a little bit and talk about being a trans person who just wants to enjoy participating in sport. What's your experience of that been? Have you faced prejudice? Have you faced, you know, a warm welcome from some? What's it been like for you, Blair?
No, so I played women's football for roughly about 9 years, and I, you know, 99.9% time had an absolute great time. But it was eventually when I actually transitioned back in 2000 and was it 16, 17. I never actually thought I had the opportunity to play in, you know, women's football. It was actually the women of the Aberdeen University football team that asked me to come, and we checked policy and all that sort of stuff to be part of their team. From that point, never really looked back. Played football at a decent level, not a particularly high level. Found my ceiling, and there's obviously a lot better players than I was, especially goalkeepers. So, you know, my experience was generally positive, and, you know, the positive far outweighed the negatives when I was playing.
Well, look, as a footballer myself, there's always someone better on the field. That's just a truism, isn't it? Blair, really appreciate you talking to us tonight. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you.
Still to come here on the UK Tonight. A capybara on the loose. It's a big rodent, if you don't know what I'm talking about. We will be talking to Marwell Zoo as they hunt for their missing samba. That's the capybara's name.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent.
It takes 60 minutes to cross the Irish Sea. It took the British monarchy a century.
I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace.
The political parties of Northern Ireland have reached agreement.
If there's anyone who might know how to fix Northern Ireland's devolved government, it's the American architect.
Changes in circumstance require changes in approach.
The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland.
I confirmed that I am willing to take up the office of First Minister. My election to the post of First Minister demonstrates the change that's happening on this island.
Catholics and Protestants on different sides, now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19 and end up in hospital, religion's nothing.
People here are adept at finding hope amid adversity. That's the spirit of a place that punches way above its weight. We help you understand the world with us. A toxic blue-green algae now poisoning Loch Ness. It's breaking your heart what has happened here.
It is.
This is a vital resource, a national treasure, now fighting for its very life. They are effectively surrounded by Northern Ireland, and that makes this the most unlikely of international frontiers.
If there's a hard border, I think it'll cripple the country.
Winter is coming. Welcome to Winterfell. It's an iconic location in this globally acclaimed drama. Ophelia was the most powerful hurricane this far east in the Atlantic on record. Sky News, the full story first.
The cameras are poised here, there, everywhere.
The day those present would never forget.
First question, Sky News.
Do you hate the thought of losing to him?
I hate the thought of losing to anyone.
Historic day here today.
They are pushing forward.
They dashed to the water.
Wait, what country are you from? The UK. Why don't you go back to your country?
Huge questions to be grappled with.
That is totally unprecedented.
It's been quite some day.
We start with breaking news.
Time now for the sport. Here's Jess.
Did you have conversations with Rafa Benitez?
Yes, through his agent and a couple with Rafa. That's another reason he put me off. He started talking about me playing left back, which didn't sit nicely with me. I was just starting to play regularly in centre midfield for a few years, and he spoke about me being a bit more versatile. He didn't sell it too well.
After 4 bids, the latest thought to be £15 million, Liverpool insist they're still talking to Villa and have not made a final offer.
Liverpool put a bid in, which wasn't accepted by Mr. Lerner. Mr. Lerner went back to them and they didn't go through.
I don't think Villa were difficult, to be fair. They set a price and stuck to it in the absence of other deals. We didn't have the funding to complete it.
Once again, his relationship with the Anfield board is under scrutiny. The veto of Gareth Barry's transfer from Aston Villa prompted renewed suggestions Rafa Benitez enjoys less than full backing from Liverpool's owners. In response, the club have released this statement. It is obviously the selling club's prerogative to put whatever price they want on the player, but on this occasion, Liverpool think the price quoted is too high.
There were other priorities. One of Rafa's points was that Gareth was versatile, that he could play left back. The owners, which by that stage were Tom Hicks and George Gillette, pointed out we'd just spent quite a lot of money on De Sena, a left back. Unless we could raise some money, it was going to be too expensive, and then it became contingent on being able to sell Shabby, which didn't happen.
And Liverpool fans blame me for Alonso leaving, but not once did he say Alonso was going to be leaving.
Quite why there was no interest in Shabby is a bit of a mystery, because clearly he was a phenomenal player and a phenomenal talent. And we bought Robbie Keane the same time, of course. Seems like small numbers now, but we were looking at spending a net 20 million each season, so the funding just wasn't there.
Gareth became terribly disappointed with Liverpool. I think to Gareth's astonishment, a couple of weeks later they paid £20 million for Robbie Keane.
I think that was a signal to Barry that, did you really want me that much?
When I knew the transfer was going to happen, I got my head down. There wasn't too many boos.
Who would have thought Gareth Barry's Villa career would come to this? Booed at every touch by the fans that once loved him.
It's got to face the music, really. You should leave, to be honest.
There were chants of Judas, booed every time he touched the ball.
It's been a long, long saga, really long. It's been talking about maybe 16, 17 weeks now.
And of course, I think that some stage or another, it must affect you.
Mentally, it was a real tough period, and I regret doing something.
Thank you very much, Jess. Now, last night, SJ told you about a capybara, large rodent, that escaped from Marwell Zoo in Hampshire just over a week ago now. Samba, as the capybara is called, is still on the run despite efforts by the zoo to track her down. These pictures were filmed by a member of the public who spotted Samba while out walking by a riverbank in Twyford. The zoo is asking people to keep their eyes open for any more sightings. Lovely day for a swim, though, for Samba, obviously. Joining me now is Laura Reid, who's Chief Executive at Marwell Zoo. Laura, you must be a bit worried.
Of course we're worried, yes. We are doing everything we can and deploying every resource we have, really, to try and find Samba and bring her back.
I hate to tell you, but that shot of Samba swimming looked like she was having a whale of a time. I mean, fingers crossed she's all right.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was a reassuring picture for us to get, actually, because that was the first really strong confirmed sighting that we'd had, with a video that showed us she was well and healthy, looking like she's still eating well. And yes, of course, they love being by water. You know, water's their natural habitat. So I'm sure she was happy, but social animals, capybaras, they like to be with other capybaras. So that's why we want to find her and reunite her with her sibling as soon as we can.
Yes, she's not going to find many others in the wild. They're South American, aren't they, capybaras? And I think I'm right in saying the biggest rodent in the world.
They are, yes, that's right. Yeah, they're a semi-aquatic rodent, biggest rodent species, akin to a very large guinea pig, really. Yeah, they do live in groups in the wild.
Yeah, that is one huge guinea pig, not one you'd bring home from school to look after for half term, is it? How did she get out?
So they arrived on the Monday from Jimmy's farm, which is in Suffolk, her and her sister Tango, and were put into our temporary sort of holding area because they undergo health surveillance, just like any animal that comes into the zoo. It's standard procedure, and that, you know, obviously the fencing and the enclosure had all been checked and signed off as per our normal policies and procedures. We still don't actually know exactly where she got out. We have a fair idea. There was a very small gap under a gate right at the end of the paddock area of the enclosure. And we assume that that's where they've managed to squeeze out from, because rodents can really squeeze down their bodies, as people may know from sort of mice and rats and things like that. So that's our best guess of how they got. They certainly don't climb, so that's our best guess of how they managed to give us the slip. So that will be all part of the investigation once we've got her back.
Yeah, of course. She's been on the run for 10 days now, obviously feeding herself in some way. What kind of things will she be eating? And just to reassure people, is she dangerous? Could she bite?
So, well, to answer the first question, she will graze on grass, leaves, any sort of vegetation that we have out in the wild. So food isn't a problem for her. And to answer the second part, no, she doesn't pose any risk to the public. Capybaras are herbivores, firstly, and they're fairly gentle, curious creatures. We don't suggest anyone approaches her. If they do see her, we're telling everyone that, call us as soon as possible. If she was cornered, or grabbed in any way, then she would defend herself, just like any animal would. But also you would scare her, and she would probably then flee, and we'd be right back to square one. So that's not what we want. If anyone sees her, we just want them to get in touch with us with a photo or video, if you can, a precise location, and then keep your distance and just keep eyes on her.
Because I guess the risk to Samba mainly is what going onto a road, as any of us would worry about with our cats or dogs, for example.
Exactly that. That is the biggest threat to her out there in the great wide world. The area we believe she's in is very, very sparsely populated. It's mostly private land along the banks of the River Itchen, between Twyford and Albrook. There aren't any roads in that area. So if she is there, and that is where the waterways are, like real sort of wetland area, there's a lot of water meadows there and tributaries. So if she's in that area, which is our best guess of where she is, and following our kind of sightings, we found a footprint in a field earlier this week, then she's pretty safe from roads, and she's not going to go towards a road and noise and urbanisation. Why would she, when she's got everything she needs by the river? So we're hoping that she's very safe, and she's got no natural predators either.
Yeah, well, that's good news. look, in publicising this, in talking to us about this and others, I would imagine quite a few people are watching this now thinking, you know what, we should get out there and have a look in the area. If you had a good response, if you had people, and dare I say it, this is the kind of thing that influencers often leap on, and they'll be round there looking as well. But if you had a response from people...
In the first few days, when we thought she was up by the village that's near the zoo, we did have quite a lot of members of the public sort of walking the streets and walking around the bridleways and the footpaths around there, keeping an eye out. But the area she's in now, that we believe she's in, it's all private land. It's not accessible to the public. The landowners have been incredibly kind in allowing us to have access for people in Marwell uniform. Hence we're all living and breathing in our uniforms all the time, 24/7, ready to respond. But no, I mean, the public won't be able to access that area. So we're hoping that doesn't happen, because if we get like a deluge of people going into the area and trying to search for her, you're just going to drive her further away. She can hear, see and smell us coming way before we will do the same with her. So she'll just go to ground or go underwater, and then we will we'll find it'll make it even harder. So that's what.
Don't deluge the area, but if you are in the neck of the woods, keep your eyes peeled. And I think, Laura, just to finish off, you do have a number, don't you? If people do spot Samba, this is the one to call.
Yes, we do. It's on our social media, on our Facebook page. The number's on there. So please just look that up and get in touch with us. And meanwhile, we'll continue to use our methods, drones, camera traps, all our resources to try and bring her home safely.
I'm now really hoping you find her. I'm starting to get a bit worried. 10 days in, it's
there's precedent for this. We lost some 30 years ago to escape the zoo, and it took 2 months to get them back.
Wow.
So we're in the long haul. We know we're bedded in, and we'll do what it takes.
Well, if we have another cold snap, she might just come back with her tail between her legs, wanted to get some warm South American comforts from you. Laura, good luck. Let us know what happens. Hopefully she comes home soon.
Thanks.
Let's have a look at the weather now.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
The next few days will remain on the cold side with showers or longer spells of rain. Expect a mostly cloudy evening with some rain in the north and west. Prolonged rain will clear across Scotland, Ireland and Northern Ireland overnight, reaching northern England and Wales later on.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?